Welcome to
Ricky's Family Fun Night.
Now, part 4, moving on. This one I could like to refer to as the Jigsaw stay-at-home order, which I think kind of fits into COVID because all the guy had to do was not fucking leave. The whole movie. He just had to stay where he was.
I love Core. I love Core. I feel like that might be another one where because I'm always trying to what? I'm just gonna help. Let's help him. Hero complex it up and just whoops.
This is one that I hated the first time I saw it because I told Ashton this previously. I was like, this one is near the bottom for me. Then I rewatched it last week. And
and I was like, what? And I was so mad. I was like, how dare you?
It was a good movie. I like how the main folly of the character in this one is that he is a good cop, just trying to do the right thing. He's just a little into it, you know? He's not
responsible for everyone.
Yeah.
I think this film is really important with a lot of the firsts that it does. You have the first daylight trap with the mausoleum with Art, and I can't remember the other guy's name, the one that has his eyes sewn shut. You have the first real imperfection. Right. You have one of the biggest moments of the mechanical imperfection of these traps with Ivan the incel, as I have him in my notes, the rapist, sexual abuser, etc., where if you see when the last pull happens, I think it's one of his legs, you see his body get pulled off with it, and when they go to the crime scene after, he's propped up. That's not them doing that. That's how he ended up. And I think it adds that sort of, we think in some of these mechanically perfect terms with a lot of these traps, like Rack, the reverse bear trap. But these traps are only as good as the man that made them. This is one of those few moments. There aren't many of them in the whole franchise, but it's one of those moments where it's not, it does the job, obviously, but it's not a perfect execution, literally and figuratively.
But do you think that is because if you think about the fact that the third movie and the fourth movie were happening at the same time, and John Kramer's literally on his deathbed, you have to think about who set up that trap. It was either Amanda or Hoffman. And we both know
it seems like a
that their
trap.
work to be flawed.
I thought it was Hoffman too. I feel like he did most of the lifting and all that stuff.
Yeah, so when he fucked up something, it was usually Hoffman. So I like to think about it like that.
He was like the ogre who was sloppy and inefficient, other than it's getting the job done. He didn't care how well it was executed. He was just we're here to kill these people. You're enjoying it just as much as I am. Because when Jigsaw said that's a human being you're dumping on the floor there, he's don't care.
Yeah, he didn't give a fuck.
No.
Yeah, Hoffman and Jigsaw are not two things that belong together.
No.
Yeah.
Because Hoffman's whole goal throughout the franchise was he's wanted to get out of it. He didn't want to be the next Jigsaw. He didn't want to learn how to do these things expertly like Jigsaw or plan too far ahead. Especially the last movie, 7, he was kind of playing it as it went. He did a pretty good job at it, especially in the police station scene. But also his whole goal throughout the franchise was just, after this, I'm out. I'm the hero. Everyone else is dead. I get to go free.
Well, I mean, he made it that way. Because in the third movie, he was the one that put the letter in for Amanda that was I know that you caused Gideon's death. John doesn't know that you were there, but I know that you were there. So he made Amanda kill Lynn. He's if you don't kill Lynn, I'm going to tell John. So everyone tends to forget that. And it's because Hoffman didn't want to coexist in a world where Amanda took over for John Kramer, because because Amanda was a murderer, she would continue John's legacy, but every one that she did would be a murder, because those were her cases. So in Hoffman's perfect world, he needed Amanda to fail that test that John had set up for her. So Amanda was out of the picture. John Kramer was dead, which means all the murders could stop, and he could be the hero of the story and go back to being the rewarded cop that stopped Jigsaw and saved the little girl. So he wanted out, but the only way for him to get out of that scenario was to ensure that Amanda was no longer alive.
That makes sense. But also, being a detective, here's a plot hole that I kind of found going along those lines, is wouldn't he know that Gordon in the first movie survived, because he must have eventually gone back to his family. Like when you dig up these case files about survivors and what they're up to keep tabs, just to make sure.
He
that
probably
nobody
was
was like-
sloppy and didn't care though. Hoffman was like that.
Hoffman
so.
didn't care. And Amanda was too obsessed with like on to the next one, on to the next one, and thinking that she knew everything because she was so close to John Kramer. She's like, he would never keep a secret from me. I'd never be a part of a game that I didn't know I was a part of.
You're
Like
reminding
that
me of
starry-eyed
Sherry Moon
student.
Zombie in like the movies, like 31 and House of a Thousand Corpses. How you're doing
Question-
that? It's reminding me of her.
The question I had was, how the hell did he swallow that tape in 3? Was he like a prostitute in a past life with no gag reflex? Because I don't know if you guys have ever tried to swallow.
Yeah, because it was covered in wax,
wax-covered
but that still
tape.
feels.
How did he fit that down his throat? Like, this is a moment that's gonna be taken out of context, but how did he fit that thing down his throat?
Hey, where there's a will, there's a way. And never underestimate John Kramer's dedication.
And in a way,
things he did
that
for his
was a
job.
will.
Right?
I have a question too about the opening scene, which is really gross, where the guy has his eyes sewn shut and the other guy's mouth sewn shut. And after the trap, the guy suddenly is able to tear his things out of his mouth. Why did he do that
God.
earlier? He could have communicated.
I
I
get
didn't
so
want to
irritated.
though.
But
I
he
get
did.
so irritated at that game because, like me, an intellectual who's not a part of the game, so I think about it only watching it. I'm just like, so remember how they had like weapons, like the mallet or like the pickaxe or something, you know what I mean? That they like he ends up killing the dude with or whatever. Here's an
Mhm.
idea. If the guy can't see what's going on, right? So clearly he doesn't know what's happening, but you can see, and your issue is your stitches. Why didn't you just like take that? And like, I know it'd be painful, but I mean, we've seen people in the Saw movies and just people with adrenaline in general, like do those things where he could like use that pickaxe to like split those, like that sewn through thing and be like, hey, like we got to work together. We're both going to end up dead instead of like, being like, oh, this dude's going to kill me. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's something that like, in most of the Saw movies, games, I try to look for a way for it to have been quote unquote winnable. And that was the one I thought with that one, where it could have been helpful to be winnable.
But I think that was posited as a head-to-head trap 1, which bleeds into 2. If Homeboy can't see, I mean, he hasn't lost his sense of sight completely just for the sake that he has his eyes sewn shut. The other senses are usually heightened in cases like that. If the dude can't talk, if he can't hear what the other guy is saying, I mean, I don't know. This one gets billed as a head-to-head trap, so I guess I'm not seeing how
But I
it's
don't
like
think that
we
it
have to
has
work
to
together.
be. Like, I don't think that it has to be. I think like they set it up to where it's like, you're gonna fight to the death. But I think it could have been a very much like, hey, if we work together, we can like get out of this trap. And I think that's what John Kramer had in mind. But you just got to look for the way out of it. And that was the way out of it. Just like so many of the other games are like, well, now we have to kill each other because there can only be one survivor. But then it's like, haha, there could have been, everyone could have survived, but you guys were too busy trying to kill each other to realize that. I think that's an ongoing theme in his games. Like
Jigsaw's games. That's
Jigsaw's
what I did.
games,
And
not
like
Amanda's.
Hoffman's or
Not
anything
Hoffman or
where it was like
Amanda's.
designed to fail.
I'm still mad about Amanda's games. Every time I think about him, I just get so mad. I really do. Like the one where Carrie dies, the detective I liked in the second movie, the angel trap where she gets her ribs ripped out after getting the key from the acid and unlocking it and then still dying. I'm like, fuck you, Amanda. You're a bitch.
Yeah.
Like
that trap is such a visually stunning thing, but the implications of it are just so fucking heartbreaking because Carrie is one of very few likable characters out of this entire franchise, and you fucking kill her. At least they gave her a great death.
Jigsaw's a nice guy.
She was a badass. Like she was a G for sure, but still horrible death. Like yikes.
Speaking of the traps, like as a bald man, I can really appreciate the hair trap where she gets her scalp kind of pulled off. I'm like, I would survive that trap.
I would not survive that trap. Yikes.
That was horrible too.
Geez.
What I like to do about the police officer, Lieutenant Riggs, I think it is, or Rig.
I love, Rig.
Rig, like all these people that he's trying to help throughout this game, if he had chosen to stay home in the main room and not leave at all, they all still would have been punished because Jigsaw had all the evidence just sitting there in those rooms the entire time. Like, he was ensuring these people were going to be punished. And the guy who was going through all this rig, he didn't have to do anything. Like, it was very evident just by going to those rooms and seeing the evidence just sitting there. He didn't have to do anything at all.
I also just think, bro, you know what you could have done? Taken a moment to call people.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
call
like he's not
people, like,
monitoring
hey,
his cell
I
phone.
found someone here.
They had early cell phones back then.
But they did, because way back in the first movie, like the cell phone. Oh,
Yeah.
yikes. But yeah, he was just like, I gotta hurry. I gotta save my ex-partner, Eric Matthews. Like, we gotta save him. Oh, I gotta do this. And he didn't think about it. Like,
Also, I gotta say too, even though this was the first movie without Leigh Whannell writing the script, it had some of the best cool action movie one-liners, such as "I just left a room with more blood on the wall than paint." It's like, that's a pretty sweet line.
That's a great line. Yeah.
But I gotta say, the person it came from too was the detective Stram.
Strom.
Oh, such a cunt.
He
I
sucked.
hate
The
him.
interrogation scenes in this movie were my least favorite part. I hated all of them with him and Jill in the room, because his whole role in this movie seemed to be pointing out the plot holes and asking her stupid, dumb questions. I'm like, who talks this way? Your job is to interrogate, not be like, well, how did this happen?
Strom
Explain
is such
slowly
a
to the
Strom was white
audience.
bread. Strom was the Boy Scout character. Strom was the, we're gonna do it by the books. We're gonna figure this out. America. Like, Strom.
America,
Captain America Strom.
Fuck yeah.
I did love seeing the transition of John truly becoming Jigsaw in this movie, when you get to see his past finally, and you get to kind of see where those flashbacks in the previous movie came from and what his life before being Jigsaw was. It kind of took him away from being a villain to kind of more of a sympathetic villain to an extent.
Yeah. I love when we have like a character and we're finally given like some backstory. So then you're like, oh, from a psychological standpoint, it all makes sense now. And I really like little moments, like little treasures in movies or TV shows or anything like that. I really like those little moments.
I think my favorite
One
trap in this
second.
one was the tug of war trap. It was just them, the two spouses playing tug of war with the poles, impaling them.
Oh God, that one.
Oh,
People hate that trap, and I don't know why. Like,
He was an
it's-
abuser. Like,
Yeah, it
she
might have been
had to
because
save
she was
herself,
abused
cut
and she was-
ties.
Yeah. Well, I think by like, because didn't he abuse her and their child, and that's why she was there, is because she didn't stand up to him or something?
He was abusing
I
children at the
think-
school too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that you're right. But I honestly felt so bad for, I think Morgan. It was Rex and Morgan was the couple.
Mm.
Like, I feel feel for her on some level, but she's one of the few. And again, this another first this movie does is this is one of the few times you see somebody that survives
Mhm.
and doesn't really fall into the cult of Jigsaw. It's a rare thing.
I
Well,
mean,
this is a question too. We'll get to this question, but there are some characters you're wondering later on, are they the next disciples of Jigsaw? Because it doesn't really tell where they go. And there are some empty spots near the end of the franchise where you're wondering who is behind the mask. We'll get to that though.
Oh, but it's, well, in Saw 3D, but we'll get there.
Before we continue to Saw 5, we actually have a word from our sponsor. Feeling trapped, chained to the same old dead-end life, need choices? Come on down to Jigsaw's Rehabilitation Emporium. We'll give you the tools you need to escape to something better, and it won't cost you an arm and a leg. Jigsaw's Rehabilitation Emporium. Life's a game. Play it. Back to the show. Now we're on.
Life's
Now
a
we're
game.
on Saw 5. Saw 5 is what I call the spy versus spy movie we never asked for, because it's two detectives hunting each other.
So now that I realize what Saw 5 was, there's a part of me that, even though I do feel like it's forgettable, because I'm like, oh wait, wasn't that a part of 6? Wait, wasn't that included in 4? When I
Yeah.
know that that's Saw 5 and it's just Hoffman versus Strom, there is a part of me that does enjoy that dynamic. It's kind of like Hoffman. I play 0% by the rules and I'm really sloppy. And then there's like Strom that's like, I do everything by the book and everything is strategically organized. So there's sort of like that dynamic going on. Plus Strom's death, I have to talk about it because as a person I am, I love how he figured everything out correctly. Okay. And it reminds me of in DC, the Flashpoint paradox, where like Lex Luthor is about ready to die. He's like, well, you know what? At least I die knowing I was right. And that is just like Strom. Like he just got out of the hospital. He just like made it through that game that he was supposed to die in. And kind of very much like Riggs, it's like, and I can't stop. And I won't stop.
And we're back to Miley.
Exactly. You're welcome.
I never knew you were such a fan of Miley Cyrus.
I'm not, but it fits.
Oh, you're
also
not, but you know
stuff.
all the songs.
I like
More than me.
I just like being knowledgeable about pop culture references.
You're really coming at us with these pop culture references like a wrecking ball. Now, I got a question about this movie is after you get out of a jigsaw trap, do you like exit through the gift shop? What happens to the people who are spared or who win the traps?
You get like a t-shirt, like I survived Jigsaw's trap. I got
And all I got
was a stupid t-shirt.
Yeah, all I got was a t-shirt. Damn it. And some trauma. Gosh.
And these scars.
Right?
I wonder how I got these scars. Fucking
Oh,
jigsaw.
God damn it, Chase.
At least it wasn't Twilight. We have to mention it once an episode how terrible it was. Getting serious, I think one of the themes in this one was a societal competition, because this one was most about competition than in the other ones. It was Strom versus Hoffman. It was figuring things out faster. And also the main trap of the 6 people or 5 or 6 people who had to work together. Their main thing was being out just for themselves and competing rather than working together. So I think if we want to like read into it too much, probably we could see it as a metaphor for capitalism versus, finding ways where everybody benefits, where we all give each other what we need to keep moving forward. Again, I recognize that we're reading into it way too much.
That's a throwback to the second movie as well. With the let's work together sort of theme where they could have worked together, but instead chose to try to take each other out like gladiators.
Because that was a common thing he said in every single tape leading up to that, the 10-liter or whatever it was of blood that they need at the end. Was every single point he kind of mentions you gotta work together, and they're like, no.
Yeah, he was like, he's like, you're whatever. Your survival instincts tell you to do this, but I implore you to think something differently. Like, so he was kind of like, here's a trick, kind of like, your son's in a safe place. Are you gonna get it? Do you get it? No.
The Fatal 5 is just, it's my favorite concept, but it's the worst execution, because I think this has it has my favorite trap in the series, which is the pendulum. The cold open might be my favorite trap of the entire franchise. But this film also has some of the worst, like at least 2 of the segments of the Fatal 5. The first one with the keys and the decapitation and that effect. I'll never not hate that effect of the girl that gets yoinked back and her head pops off, and it's like painfully fake. It's painfully computer animated, and that will never not piss me off.
Or it was a method actor who really committed to the role.
Wow.
Oh no, that shit was computer animated, and I will not be convinced.
I mean, I'll give you the effects were pretty bad, but also I love how like none of them checked to see if the same key would open all of, like they were just like, we all need to get a different key. Like no one thought that it might be the same key. I mean, I guess.
I think this movie was kind of heavy-handed with the message more so than the story, where certain things like logic was sacrificed in favor of moving the story forward. Where in other entries in the series, you do see them try certain things to make sure the parts of the trap can't be utilized in this specific way. Whereas this one, like, they'll assume things instead of trying them in order to move the story forward.
These characters in particular were picked because they were selfish and didn't have the mind to think of others, though. So maybe logically it wouldn't come to people's minds that are like that.
Yeah.
That's why Jigsaw was like, hey, think differently.
I also think, though, with this movie, with kind of getting to what Ashton was talking about, is this is something I discussed with my fiance as we were watching these movies, as we do with a lot of the ones on the show. But I almost feel like the conversations of didn't anyone think of, or wouldn't you just do this? I feel like on one hand, those are the conversations that we should be having when it comes to the traps, but on the other, I think it gets to the core of John Kramer's ideology. As flawed as it is, I mean, it's flawed from the first film when he goes to slash the throat of Detective Tapp. He says he's not a murderer. Killing is distasteful. There's no way that he doesn't know that that's not going to kill Tapp. I'm sorry, there isn't.
But,
so from the
but
very
like
first
he knew about
movie,
blades, like, you know what I mean? If you think about it, like if you think about like his knowledge of blades and like the deep cut, like, and you all, somebody else pointed this out to you. Sorry to interrupt, but like,
no, you're good.
it was because if you remember in that moment, John Kramer went after Tapp because they had the opportunity to save the dude that he had trapped in his workshop. And they chose to go after John Kramer instead. So that's why he like slit him. But you know, John Kramer knew all about like metals and stuff like that. So like, did it wound him? Yeah. Was he still able to tell his partner to go get help though? Like if he'd wanted to kill him, I feel like he very easily could have killed him. But I get what you're saying about like, yeah, clearly like that wasn't kosher. Like he could have killed him in that scenario. Like, oh no, I did it wrong, but he didn't. So I think there's also that needs to be talked about. And also, the sadness of that is then Tapp sends his partner off to keep chasing John Kramer. And the whole point of their test there, because it was a test for Tapp and his partner, Singh, was, are you going to value the life more than you are catching the criminal? And both times Tapp, like even after Jigsaw like took Tapp down, Tapp, like his partner could have stayed and called for backup, called for help to save the dude, like, you know, and they did end up saving the person in the warehouse, but like, you know what I mean? Instead they're like, no, go after Jigsaw. So Jigsaw, like John Kramer was making a point that's like, what's more important, catching me or saving a life? Which one's more important? And both times Tapp chose catching the bad guy, which ultimately is an ongoing theme, because then his whole life is just gotta catch the Jigsaw killer, gotta catch him. And he like never understands the ramifications of, whoops, sacrifice that person's life, maybe. Whoops, sacrifice my partner's life. And then he feels bad about it, but still never learns from it. So
and
just wanted to touch
also
on that.
touch on this and then go back to my original point. We see in the, I think when Hoffman gets promoted, and we see that Singh is deceased. Going back to the video games, that is what the ending of the first game, if you pick the true ending, spoiler, but who's going to play it? Singh, Singh Tapp, god damn it. Detective Tapp takes his own life at the end of the credits. So that's kind of the missing link, because like we don't really know that Tapp dies unless you played the game, which takes place in between the first two movies. So that sidebar out of the way.
Well, that sucks too, because like he's all intent on getting the bad guy to keep from him getting anybody else caught into a trap, though. Because to him, if he gets him, he's going to save more than just these 2 lives. He'll save however many other lives he has planned for whoever else.
I have a question about
the
going
last
back
to Jigsaw's.
The last trap in this one with the blood, where they all could put a certain amount of blood in, and there's 2 people at the end. Like, couldn't they just like pee in the jar? Did it have to be blood? How does that device know what's filling up the jars?
It's a different density, I'm sure, because blood's so much thicker.
But it was all about weight, though. The weight of the jar was what was going to do it.
You think they?
But it only held so much too. Like it stopped. Like the spout. So there's only so much. It's not like you can fill it more with. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And also, like, we've seen in other games where it's like, you're not playing by the rules, and you didn't think I was going to catch you not playing by the rules? Like, bad. Like,
I think they'd get points for creativity though. He'd be like, "Yeah, you broke the rules, but A for effort. I wouldn't have thought of that. Come on. I planned all these things. I wouldn't have thought of that stupid shit." One thing I didn't like about this movie was that Strom was just one big exposition device. Like his entire journey through finding Jigsaw's traps and being like, "This is how you did it." The plot hole from the last movie. Huh, this is how he did it. And have like the flashbacks going on. Like that was his only part of this movie, not just chasing Hoffman, was just being an exposition device.
Yeah, but I appreciated that. I appreciated like for all those people that are like the Saw movies don't make any sense. I'm like, let me introduce Strom for you. He's gonna explain it for you because you clearly didn't make it to Saw 5.
He's like the Morgan Freeman of the franchise. He just explains it so everybody can see it.
He's like, you may have missed this,
Morgan
but
Freeman,
here I
Morgan
am.
Freeman.
This
Here's
movie
what
also
you
has
missed
one of the
on
better
last
lines too,
movie.
like where Jigsaw's talking to Hoffman. He said, "The blade in your pendulum was inferior." It's like such a specific diss. It was like MGK versus Eminem. No, he gets puts in his place.
Yeah, it's like,
It's like, you thought you were
ooh.
me? Boom, fire.
Yeah, like that.
I like that though, because it's just like, how dare you try to act like this is as good as I am?
Yeah. It's like,
a
sincerely,
pride
it's
thing.
not a form of flattery. You're messing up my
Back to
shit.
Saw 7.
Yeah.
Like, same thing with that other dude. When he's like, I made it through a jigsaw test and I did it. Ha ha, I passed. And John Kramer's like, oh, you did?
you?
Did you? Did
Did you
you?
really?
Even the
you
book sign, he's
really?
like, "Oh, I don't need your picture. We met." Apparently.
Yeah.
Yes! Oh my god.
Also, I don't understand, like one specific trap is the bathtub scene where suddenly there's the, sudden but inevitable betrayal where she stabs her in the neck and puts her in the bathtub and says, "I don't trust her." They didn't set that up at all. Like, what reason would she have had to not trust her specifically and to trust the other
Bitches
person?
be crazy. Bitches be crazy.
That's
No
a
lie
good
there.
explanation
Fucker,
for
she's a
that.
girl. Fucker. I don't trust that bitch.
I don't trust her. She's a good box. So we can all agree the shitty British guy in this movie messed it up for everybody. I'm really glad he was
Yeah.
pretty quickly gotten rid of.
Yeah.
I
can
love
make it on my
that
list.
character, but
If only they'd done that with Xavier or like, the other people in the movies that were like pieces of shit.
Unbearable.
We live, we learn, I guess.
I was
People
on
say you don't grow in the Saw movies. They learned. They took out the bad guy first.
another problem I had was when Jigsaw was telling Hoffman, like, the traps can never be personal. But as we find out in part 6, which is a very personal setup, it's all about,
yeah.
like, he makes it very personal. It's not just about like helping other people. It's like, this guy specifically fucked me over. I'm going to find a way to relate this to somebody else.
But he was fucking over so many people as well. You know
But
what I mean? Like,
If he hadn't fucked
Everyone's
John over
connected to him.
specifically, would he have been there? Like, would he have aimed that high? Would he have actually gone after one of the biggest problems out there, if not for the fact that he was specifically fucked up by it?
but yeah, because it was like the healthcare industry. And like when he was dying of cancer, the reason he went after that guy was he was like, oh my God, I found this like treatment. You know what I mean? Like, I really want to try it. It's had like really great like results and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, why would we help you? You're not going to live that long. Like, we're not going to do it. And he's like, and obviously John Kramer was pretty wealthy. He's like, I'm paying for health insurance, like, for you. Like, clearly, like, as a person, if I'm paying for it, I should be able to pay for, and like, you know what I mean? Like, we pay for the health care we want, you know what I mean? As opposed to what we don't want. And I think that was his whole flaw with it all. I don't know. I can totally back that with just going through the stuff I went through, like, in my life personally with like the healthcare industry and how it really fucks people, like can really fuck people hard. So I mean, and I think it taught like the main character like the value of a life, like, you know what I mean? Like, this person has no family and like no really, like, not really a lot of friends and just is like focused on their career, whereas like this lady is like a mother and a grandmother and like has like, you know, a very emotionally fulfilled like life, but you know, she isn't as healthy, you know what I mean? So I think it taught him, instead of looking at it as like, oh well, we're gonna approve this to you because he's in perfect health, whereas like, oh no, this guy is gonna die, fuck it, they were gonna die anyway, like sort of that mentality. I think he teaches him like what has more value. I think that was the point of that movie.
I gotta say too, Saw 6 is my second favorite in this series.
Interesting.
It's on the upper for me for sure.
What's annoying too is in the very first scene where fucking, what was his name, Eddie? Yeah, I think it was Eddie. He tells him in the tape, he's like, "Don't lean forward," and he immediately leans forward.
Well, I mean, that's like a weird subconscious thing, though. You know what I mean? Kind of like don't press the button, and they're like,
Groot.
I'm gonna press the button. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a very
don't
much
think about cats. You're thinking about cats.
Yeah, exactly.
The
so
musical
I
or
think
the
that's
cat?
it's like it's a test. It's a test.
It's a
test.
I have a question too. Why did the night guard at the office, when he gets shot, why did he already have his gun drawn? Was it because he already saw Hoffman in there and he was going after him and that's why it was drawn? Because they never really spell that out. That's what I'm speculating.
I only have like just some thoughts on that based on just like, have you ever like sensed someone or something like behind you, even though you had no reason to know that they were there, like, ta-da! Or like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, oh, and then like you knew that they were there before like they had made themselves known. I feel like sometimes that could be a scenario as well. Like that's something, like he was in tune. His third eye was open. Like, but I mean that, like if someone puts your eyes are closed and someone puts like their hand in front of like your face with your eyes closed, you can sense their hand there. Like you can kind of feel it if you've ever played that game as a kid or anything like that. That could be a scenario. Just good instincts. Good instincts.
He was a damn good cop and he got shot for it by an insurance guy.
He was a good guy.
Also, I think this one is one where he talks about the serrated versus surgical knife.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't have
Like,
figured out as a
fuck you.
detective that there is a distinct difference in the pattern you make with a surgical knife versus a serrated blade.
Mm-hmm. So props to that.
I like the forensic stuff with like true crime and whatnot, so I definitely like the little nod to little details.
Yeah. Wink, wink. Notice.
Also,
I
speaking of
agree.
the little details, when Hoffman goes to meet Joel Tuck in the office, the sign on the wall in the background says, "Don't do it." Was that foreshadowing to his fate later in the series? Because if he hadn't have gone to her office and demanded what she had, he probably wouldn't have ended up where he was at the end.
They always have like little clues like that throughout the movies. Like even things like cherish your life or see what I see, feel what I feel. Like they always have like little like nuances, like sort of little like subtle hints and clues. I feel like everywhere. I think so. I think it was definitely like a foreshadowing thing. I feel like Saw has so much foreshadowing and even like little clues and hints and stuff like that everywhere. I think so.
And actually, when we were talking about this, a question that you had too was, did John know that Amanda was involved in the death of his son, Gideon? What do you guys think?
I
always wondered if that was a reason why he picked her too, other than the fact that Matthews, like it seemed like that she was involved in multiple things, so we're not I'm not sure, but I wondered if that was a reason.
I think so. I think it would have been like with her game and everything, she like kept that secret from him, but we've seen him time and time again. Like I planned it all, from the start. Like I think it's a true redemption story if you think about it. Like his like being able to like forgive her and help her grow had she like been able to learn the true nature of Jigsaw, I guess. Like, you know what I mean? Like be truly baptized.
Mhm.
Like, wouldn't that have been the greatest of redemption stories? Wouldn't that have been like the greatest arc? Like John Kramer's ultimate of goals? I think so. His like dying wish. Like I think that was I think he knew all along. I don't obviously think that she knew that he knew, which is how Hoffman played that like trump card and like ended up fucking pretty much everyone over, including himself, honestly.
Yeah, that was.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on Saw 6?
Can we talk for a minute about the shotgun carousel and how I think I take it back? That's the best thing about this series. Just
That was
how
pretty sweet.
delightfully twisted it is.
I like the one guy at the end. He's like, "No, you look me in the eye when you're choosing to kill me. It's like, don't look
Yeah.
away. You look me in the eye."
Oh, it's just like
Speaking
he
of
literally
that
did
dude,
Oh,
speaking of that dude, was anyone else thinking of Will Ferrell when they saw that guy? Because the way he talked and the way he looked, you remember me of Will Ferrell, and that was
Yeah, a
a
little
weird.
bit.
Yeah.
He's like an underinflated Will Ferrell, like a deflated Will Ferrell.
value brand.
Kirkland brand Ferrell.
Great value.
The brand Ferrell, the dollar store, Phil Werrell.
No, I kind of liked how he really was trying hard to help people, and like the one was crazy with choosing the healthy young man and the older woman. Just those mind games for sure.
Yeah.
Of having to
If
choose
you
somebody.
want to play a game to a whole
Yeah.
new meaning. Like, oh, you want to play a game? We're playing a game.
Who's
Got some
more
games.
deserving? Oh, you still have to choose one. Like you're always gonna feel bad no matter what.
I'm
And then he
disappointed.
ends
Like
up-
in none of these movies, he doesn't incorporate like skee ball or any classic carnival games. Like, why can one person just be like, sink 400s in a row to get out of your chains? Just
Jigsaw
play a
meets
game.
Pennywise.
I really want to play a game seriously now. Do not pass go. Do not collect
Ted
$200.
DiBiase. All I can think of is Ted DiBiase with the dribble this ball 10 times, give you $100. Like,
Or Rick and Morty, where it's like, you know what? I'm lazy right now. Just sink some 3-pointers and sink 5 in 10 minutes or you're dead.
But that's not the genius mastermind that we're used to, I guess, with all movies.
Yeah. However, the genius mastermind also made what we're talking about next, Saw 7. Lucas, you had some strong opinions in this one, and Ashton, I know yours are clashing with his. So go. Lucas, what were yours?
This one, Saw 6 underperformed at the box office. I mean, it was still commercially very successful, but critically it was kind of a flop.
Mhm.
For a Saw movie, it was a flop. So I think they knew the writing was on the wall and they were trying to rush everything. It felt like they were throwing shit at a wall to see what sticks. I think first off, the blood has this like reddish pink tone, is pinkish red tone to it, and that takes me out of it to some extent, but that's a very like baseline, damn it. Let's see what else, because I have a lot in my notes. There's a lot of like, I've heard a criticism that this film hates women, and especially with Hoffman and Jill's storyline, I can't disagree with that. I mean, the where in Jill's dream, where he's like, the only bad part about killing you is I can only do it once, and then at the very end when he's slamming her head into the desk and calling her you fucking cunt and all this, it just...
I don't think it's as much about the movie hating women. I think they set that up pretty well, and it was earned. Like, it wasn't about women, it was about that.
And then there's also the whole, what's her name, Dina in the love triangle trap. There's
I didn't like that opening scene.
Yeah, the opening trap
I
was
used
lame.
to like that one, but after a while, like the more I would see it, I was like, yeah, no, that one kind of
But
irritated me.
punishing
And then
cheaters was an ongoing theme throughout all the movies. I'll agree that that trap was distasteful, but like that was an ongoing theme throughout the movies. Like, don't cheat on your significant other, because like John Creamer took like, you know,
John Creamer
marriage
really
and
liked
like
Carrie Underwood.
family and all that stuff pretty seriously.
My problem with that trap mostly was like the setup time. First of all, in a public square like that, where there are definitely cameras recording, why would you risk everything to set up this intricate ass trap in public, where apparently all the passerby notice the trap all at once, where they all kind of turn at once and notice it?
Yeah,
but they weren't even important either. Like they never did anything to like Jigsaw. Like he wasn't,
Question: do we think that that was John Creamer's game? Because who were those people tied back to John Creamer?
Yeah, no, yeah, it was probably a Hoffman thing for sure.
Or was it
makes
Amanda?
That was like an Amanda game. Well, no, it was winnable. It could have been an Amanda game.
Yep, because she, like, you know, I mean, she could have, like, so, I mean.
But with the vengeful nature of it, I would argue it's Hoffman. I think Amanda's games are just about control and who has it and who doesn't have it. Hoffman establishes his vengeance, his like revenge owner from Saw 5 and the Pendulum Trap. So I would argue it could be a Hoffman game. I could see it being an Amanda game, but I think a Hoffman game makes more sense.
Well, Hoffman was
even
definitely involved in it, because who else could have carried those people up onto that thing to put them in those traps and set up the saw and carry that woman on top and get everything set up like that? Because John was in no condition and Amanda couldn't have done it. She physically couldn't have.
I should have specified. I'm sorry. I should have been more clear with this. It was a Hoffman game, but here's why it was a Hoffman game. Because we forget that John Kramer and Amanda are both dead. It was a Hoffman game. And you're right. Hoffman does do things by like revenge and like stuff like that. But the reason he continued on with this is because, remember, he wanted to be the cop that had, you know, all the glory and done no wrong. This is Saw 7. So there is no more John Kramer. They already found Amanda's body. They're like, there's another accomplice in here. Strom died in the last movie. And remember, he had to plant evidence. He had to make it seem like it was Strom who was the one working on the inside and like helping everyone. So Hoffman set up that game in the public area because he wanted the attention, because he wanted people to think that Strom was continuing his work, because they're like, we don't know what happened to Strom. He just disappeared. There's no trace of him. So that was like a very publicly showy saw trap game in front of, like, you know, out there in the open, to make it seem like Strom was still out there doing these jigsaw horrible tests, because that was Hoffman's out. That's why. So it was a Hoffman game, but
I think the
That's why it was
concept.
shitty.
I think the concept of a trap in public in broad daylight like that is interesting, but logistically, there's so many moving parts and so many variables that wouldn't be
plausible.
It seems very plausible, and I think
But I
it could
mean,
only be a Hoffman.
It was just
say, yeah.
It was just for showy, for him to be like, see, look, it's Strom. It's Strom, guys. Strom was working with John Kramer and Amanda the whole time. See, it was totally him. Yeah, I'm still the hero cop. Yeah, it was Strom. Yeah, totally Strom. Totally.
Don't
Like-
look into my general. It's that guy over there. Don't look over here.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah.
And
So I
also
think
the
that's why it
way
was-
it tries to break the glass with like the flat part of her briefcase just makes me laugh every time. You're like, donk! Like, you're not cash money in the bank, Linda. You're fucking
Also, this one is one I had a problem with. Maybe going along with what Lucas was saying, is the guy Bobby, his wife at the end. She literally did nothing to deserve that, where she gets deep
Right.
fried for no reason other than her
Right.
husband's a liar.
Yeah.
Like, she had no way of knowing he was lying. There was no clues given to her. She had no involvement in it. And it seemed like, I think it was Hoffman set that one up too, right?
That's what made me think he did too, because while Jigsaw would have wanted revenge like on him, I don't think he would have had more fair trap. And if he did have a plan, Hoffman like went off of it.
Yeah. I think it was one
I
of the
would say
situations where he
Hoffman went
fixed
off
it
of
up a little bit.
Yeah.
was
I
like,
think
if it
Hoffman
were
went off of it, but John Kramer set it up. But like, well, keep in mind, like
Mhm.
this was a trap. John Kramer knew he was dying, but in
Mhm.
his hopes, he thought that Amanda would like finally see the error of her ways and continue on doing things. And you know, but then Hoffman was the only one left standing. But also we have to remember that when Hoffman executes things, he changes what John already had set in motion, because he tried to like mess with that one trap and was gonna fuck it all the way up. And
Mhm.
John and Amanda were both like, "What are you doing?"
You have a
like-
degree.
Yeah,
Like instead of just having her locked in a room somewhere, like the little
Yeah.
boy, like
Or
he
like-
actually
or
made
even
her part of
Daniel.
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. How he had him safe. He could have had like the wife safe because he knew that like he wouldn't have wanted, like someone going after his wife like that. I feel like that was part of what that would have been for him.
So
Yep.
I have a question on this one.
Yeah.
Finally, in this movie, after 7 films, after a lot of teasing of it, we finally get the payoff for the reverse bear trap. That is like one of the most, I would say, the most lasting image of the franchise. Is the payoff worth it?
It's not so much the payoff I had a problem with. It was what happened directly after, but I'll get on that after you guys answer the question.
Are you referring to Hoffman being put in the bear trap, or are you referring to Jill?
Jill, because at the end of 6, Hoffman gets out of it. He has his jaw torn up, but he survives. He finds a way out.
I wasn't sure if there was a
But
flashback of that in 7. Sorry.
I think what you're asking is like, was it cool seeing the bear trap actually be executed? Is that what you're asking?
Was it worth the wait?
Because you finally see it. The only time you see it in action is on the
mannequin,
on
the tape in the very first film. Yeah, the
I
mannequin.
think it's heart-wrenching for me because I loved Jill. I loved Jill Tuck, and it was heart-wrenching for me. And I think it's pretty sad. But also, like, that John Kramer, I don't think had that intended for Jill. Like, he didn't have that plan. Like, Hoffman kind of did that, and that's what is ultimately his demise. Like, John loved Jill, so I mean, I think that payoff from going to the movie and finally seeing the bear trap happen, was it like kind of cool? Yeah, you know, because it had so much build up. Was
Maybe
it cool
on a
with
character
it being Jill?
Yeah.
No, it made me really sad, actually.
Well, I think
because I wanted her to be the final girl. I wanted Jill Tuck to be the final girl, and they killed her off. Damn it!
It kind of fits in too to how his life's kind of tragic in the way that he's trying to take control and help people rehabilitate. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this, it's really makes John's life a tragedy. Is the one person he really had left dies indirectly by his hand and his trying to seize control of the world, or not the world in general, but the way people rehabilitate. Because he wanted to have a lasting legacy, and his lasting legacy could have been
his
Jill.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's one of those like interesting parallels where it's like John and Jill's lives were always like connected. Like, in as much as they had like different views on things, like she was like, I'm gonna help everyone, and she would like, you know, she was like a very rose glasses type person. Like, I want to help everyone become better, and he had originally started off that way. Like, I want to help give housing to the homeless. I want to make these affordable. I want to like. They started off like being so very similar, which is why they like, you know, were perfect together, and they had like this beautiful lovey-dovey relationship, and we're having a perfect baby. And even though he was dying and it was sad, it was like, well, my legacy can live on through my beautiful wife and my child. And it was like this really beautiful story of like hope and redemption and changing the world for the positive. And then like once he loses his son and he realizes that you can't save anyone, and then all that stuff happens, it's very much like their lives were always like connected and like tied. It was almost like let's use Death Note, kind of like a L and a Light Yagami, sort of like it was always going to go this way. I feel like.
Point out she's referencing the manga, not the shitty movie on Netflix.
Not the shitty movie on Netflix. Don't watch that. No one supported.
Don't support it. Don't need to support Netflix. They make bad decisions. Jigsaw would have a field day with Netflix.
True. Yikes.
My problem with the ending of this one wasn't just the fact that Jill got punished by Hoffman and had the bear trap on her head. It was the fact that Carrie Elwes comes back at the end, but he comes back directly after it happens to follow what was in the will. Like if something were to happen to Jill, act on my behalf. But he incidentally is there to act on his behalf the second Hoffman walks out of the burning building. What I would rather have seen was Hoffman like get away, escape to some island somewhere, think he got off scot-free. And then he approaches him, and then he gets mugged, and then he gets killed or locked in that room, and then he gets punished. Because it felt like it was too rushed at the end, where as soon as he's walking out of the burning building, they're just there to punish him. Like they already know he killed her, but they didn't try to stop him.
I don't think so, because think about it. Like Hoffman was taking down all of like the police department and like the FBI and all this stuff. So clearly, like when you think about something like that going on, it's going to get like a lot of feedback. It's going to get a lot of like news cover. A lot of people are going to be aware of this. So think about it. If they hadn't acted in that exact moment, don't you think Hoffman would have eventually been detained by someone in the police force. Like, he can't be free forever. So if they hadn't acted in that moment, would he just be incarcerated? Is that the justice that John Kramer wanted?
Well, I'm saying, like, how are they just
Wasn't it on the
incidentally there
news
at
and
that
stuff?
moment?
Yeah. So I feel like they had to like jump in that exact moment to get him.
But if they knew that he was in there killing Jill in that police station, why wouldn't they have to try to stop him from killing Jill then?
Well, maybe that's why he was there, because he figured he would go to the police station
Yeah.
and
Because
didn't
they were
make
like,
it there
gonna
in
catch him.
time.
But he's going to go to the police station to kill Jill, and we'll catch him there. But they underestimated how freaking crazy that dude was, which, by the way, Amanda's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and I would never want to take her on because her traps are unwinnable. But Hoffman genuinely scares me as a person. Like, he like lived through that bear trap. He took down like everyone. He killed people with things I didn't even know he could kill people with from a serial killer standpoint. Like, I'm like, whoa,
Yeah,
that
fucking
dude.
the Hoffmater in that movie. Oh my
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hoff is gonna take you down. Like,
It's like cutting through an armed police station like Darth Vader at the end of Rogue One, just cutting through that place.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, like,
Yeah, and Terminator for sure. Just
Anybody,
looking around. Drive a car through here. That's good.
Do you have any closing comments on Saw 7, which should have been the official end of the series, in my opinion?
I agree to that. I need to talk about this because people are like, it doesn't make sense that Gordon came back. It makes no sense. No, it makes perfect sense, people. Like, Amanda learned after John how to make the traps, okay? John was like a genius architect, right? Okay, Hoffman was the muscle, but throughout all the movies, we see all these surgical traps and all this stuff. Nobody wondered who was doing that. Like, who did we think was doing the surgical traps and all the like stuff that would like take intricate like schooling to learn how to do, like put a key behind someone's eye. Like, I love that they're like, haha, you thought that he didn't make it, but we never talked about it. Because throughout watching the movies, I always thought it was weird because they always had a follow up on the characters. Like, yeah, that character died. Yeah, that character died. That character's dead. Or, you know what I mean? But we didn't find out about Gordon until the last movie. So I was always like, where is he? Why didn't they mention it? And everyone just assumed he was dead. So I think him like showing up and being like, surprise, bitch, was amazing. Like
he totally redeems that character in this one, because in the first movie he was just, it wasn't very good. I didn't like his acting either, like equally to Leigh Whannell. Like, he wasn't a very good actor in that one. I'm sorry, but it was a good movie, but two bad actors are the main roles. And this one, he fucking nails it. I think it's because he was paid more, which was the reason he wasn't in part 2 or any of the other sequels, is they weren't offering him enough money after the first one was so successful.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there were some moments when I was like, oh, his acting was a little bit cringe. But overall, I'm kind of like, I'm glad they chose him because, you know, it's him.
Yeah.
So.
It's Robin Hood.
Yeah, I'm like, why? Because he played that perfect role. Like, I'm a good doctor, but I didn't learn how to care. Everything's just by, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, what? They're just a normal person. I don't even think about them as a human. They're just another case. Whatever. Like, so I think it was interesting to be like, technically, was he a bad guy? No. But was he a good guy?
Yeah.
One of my other biggest cringe moments was, I think it was this one with the key with the string, and he had to pull it up like through her mouth.
Oh, yeah.
That's so hard to watch.
Yeah.
That one was.
What even is this?
That one felt unwinnable. Like, how the hell could you not scream? It'd be a reflex. If someone's like tearing the inside of your throat out with a fish hook, you're gonna try to scream.
And then going like harder and harder and yanking, like,
and then he yells at her.
The things he's cutting.
I mean,
right at the end, he's like, "Why won't you shut the fuck up?"
He's like, all you had to do was not scream with a fish hook being pulled out of your throat. All you had to do was not scream.
I mean, I think that's one of those things where it's again like where we argue like, is this a redemption or is this a just desserts like scenario? Yeah. I think that's one of those. But also like if he hadn't got it like caught in there and like he had just like been able to pull it out, like some masterful skills, then he would have been able to do it. But like you know what I mean? Like, I guess it could have been winnable, but was it?
I think maybe the hard part of winning that trap was like he was trying too hard not to hurt her as he was pulling it out. Whereas if he had just like yanked it in one motion like a band-aid, she would have tried to scream and he would have covered her mouth before it made enough noise for those things to come at her throat. Like it probably would hurt like hell, more so for her than him, obviously. But like I think I might have won the game.
It's things like that, like the thought of
But
like
again-
even doing that to people where I just can't even do it. It's like I just close my
But
mind
again,
off.
we're getting into discussions of like, well, if I was in that trap, I would have this. If
Yeah.
Hindsight's
Which we've
2020.
never been there.
situation I'm at, I think central
We're
to-
ever in that scenario there, Chase. Like you got just pull it out right like a band-aid. I'll be like, you got this. We
You're
got it.
dark.
You got it.
Right. I also think something that's central to the franchise is Paul's focus on the will to live that he thinks is the missing piece from everyone that's in his games. And I think that's an interesting facet of it all is we can sit here on this podcast or people can be watching the movies and discussing it and being like, well, I would have been there, I would have done that. But until you're in that situation, chips are on the table, do you really know what you're capable of? I mean,
Honestly,
you hear about
no.
people you hear about people that are in car accidents that like have this brute strength and are able to free their loved one from the wreckage or whatever. You know, there are those moments of adrenaline rush and all that. Like, once you're in on, like, do you really know? And these discussions, as fascinating as they are to have, and as much as we can chuckle about something, like it's to it because we would never know unless we're in that situation.
I
Yeah.
agree. I don't think you'll ever know until obviously you be in that situation, which, you know, hopefully none of us are ever in that situation. Like, yikes. But I
Right.
mean, when I think about it though, I think the games very much fit like for the person. Like for me, like, and John Kramer's knowledgeable about people, like me, like I can't do anything eye related. If it were anything eye related, I would just choose to die. Like if it was like gouge your eyeball out or you're gonna have like a Venus flytrap thing kill you, I'd be like, well,
Let the
I was
fly
never
trap
gonna
kill me.
win this from the beginning. I was gonna die from the
Like-
beginning.
I
So
guess it's death
Yeah.
by fly trap.
yeah, like I'd be like,
It's
well,
like I had a good run.
yeah, like well, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean?
Bowing
Whereas
out.
like with some of them, it was like, you know, just desserts, but some of it was like,
If I had to like try to do something to somebody, I'd be like, no, just kill me now.
Oh
I'm
my
not
God.
doing that.
I just
No.
remembered this. This is so important, guys. So important. Way back to like Amanda having to like dig for the key right out of someone's stomach. I didn't realize this until I heard someone else talking about the Saw movies bring it up. Who do you think that person was? Because they have a theory, and I'm like, it's ingenious.
I thought it was like her like boyfriend or some shit, but
No, her
it didn't
boyfriend
seem
was
like
the
she
one,
recognized him.
Her boyfriend was the one who killed Gideon accidentally.
I think she was using him, but yeah. Gideon. Yeah, like Cecil, maybe?
Cecil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone had two theories. There are two theories that I've heard behind it. One was that it was someone that had already failed a previous game. So that was just their like ending. Like they already lacked the will to survive. So it was Amanda ending them, which I don't think that's as necessary as this one. I think it was, in fact, her drug dealer and supplier that was causing her to like slowly kill herself, and she had to take her life back and take control of her life by taking that person's life, like
I like
losing
that.
like what she valued most, like her drugs, to help her live, to like take her life back in that moment. That was a theory that I saw, and I was like, ooh, that
Okay.
could be
That.
it.
Okay, that works. Now on to what I think is the worst Saw movie, is the one nobody asked for, that wasn't released the following year of Saw 7, which released some years later.
7 years.
7 years later. Holy shit. That was, you released 7 movies in 7 years, and then you skip 7 years to release a movie that nobody asked for. We're talking about Jigsaw. Opening thoughts on this one, because I'm just gonna take a drink of beer and stay out of this.
I'm just gonna
I-
say
mm.
yuck.
Go ahead.
Yuck. Like honestly, I hated the new character that they brought in. I I'm just like, we ended it with Dr. Gordon. I was happy with that. We didn't need this. We didn't need this at all. And even though I was really happy to have Tobin Bell get another paycheck and to see him reprise his role as John Kramer / Jigsaw, I was like, nobody needed this. We didn't want this. We didn't need this. Like, do I love Saw? Yeah. Was I so excited when there was a new Saw movie? Absolutely. Was I kind of like, why did you just undo everything that you had just done for no reason? Why I was just like, why did this happen? Why? What was the point? What was the point?
It was the inferior Blade to the rest of the movies. It was somebody trying to be the next franchise. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
See it. This
movie pisses me off, not as much as 3D, but as I said before it started, it's like 3D. So if I was on home video, it's like an F. This is an F plus. It's not much better to me. My biggest complaint is that this flies in the face of a lot of the things that the franchise did well. It was too polished. It was too precise. You have these, oh god, it's in the one girl when they take the little micro USB out of her thing. Like, I get 10 years after John Kramer, a lot of the early films especially had that like industrial metal music video, like a Mushroom Head video, which they use in the soundtrack. They use Mushroom Head a couple times. Had that editing style, and it was really, I mean, the shit room from the first movie, grungy. It was DIY. It was really down and dirty. And this movie, from a almost like outward philosophical standpoint, flew in the face of all that. And that's why this movie pisses me off so much.
It was like, wow, they really they hired a housekeeper before they put him in this scenario, huh? Weird.
Yeah.
Like, no, but I mean, I get what you're saying. I agree with that in a lot of ways, but also someone I also saw, like, I can't remember everyone, so but I've seen, because I've just watched so many Saw like theories and stuff like that, but someone made mention of how Hoffman went on this like revenge rhetoric, right? How he killed the guy that ended up murdering his sister. So he didn't really take Jigsaw's whole like thing to heart. The same thing could be said about Logan. Was that his name, Logan?
Yeah.
The one person that he kills in there was the dude that I feel like had actually had a redemption. I can't remember what the character was, but he ends up shooting him like from afar. And I feel like just as a revenge thing, because he was the reason that his wife died. So it was like kind of like a flashback back to Hoffman, to where they have like the same like potential issues. So I mean, I don't want Hoffman 2.0 because I'd rather just have Hoffman at that point. Even though
it seemed like that's what they were trying to do, was like the next Hoffman versus the next.
And I didn't want that. I don't want that at all. Like,
but the twist at the end where it takes off his collar and his was fake the whole time or whatever, and the other guy died because of it. I was like, that's kind of reusing and twist he already did with when he gets up out of the chair in part 4. He wasn't gonna get electrocuted to begin with.
Yeah. So I don't know. My thing about Logan was like, did I want a watered down version of Hoffman? No. Really didn't.
Does anybody have any positives about this movie? Because I actually don't.
Tobin Bell.
Tobin Bell, he's in it.
Oh, absolutely. My positives for this movie, I see the flaws in it, but I enjoy the laser color, showdown, that climax, particularly the final image. Again, it flies in the face of the practical nature of so many of the movies, save for, as a bitch about earlier, Saw 5 and the decapitation. But that, like, splitting off into people compared to, like, the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, that visual was great. That was, at least from a holy shit perspective, to me, that was on the level of the shotgun collar, Lynn's death in Saw 3. From a just shock, first time seeing it, holy shit. Of course, Lynn's is practical. His is computer-generated effects. I've made feelings clear on those, especially in this franchise. Again, it's too clean, it's too polished. That's my biggest complaint with this. But that was one positive. back to the first part of the five, the Buckethead portion, is I did appreciate how there was an escalation. How you have a little bit, they cut themselves that little bit of blood, and then their bucket came off. The next person had a little more. I think Chris and himself worse than he wanted to, and all the way up to the last one, like shreds the hell out of his back, and we assume he's not dead. Not. I did appreciate that from like an escalation. That's one thing that Saws tended to do well, but it was one positive and otherwise just kind of shit show for me.
So, you have any thoughts on Jigsaw? All right, let's move on. Before we get to the ranking of all 8 movies, what are you hoping to see in the upcoming movie Spiral, The Return of Darren Lynn Bousman as the director? Starring Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, by the way, surprisingly. What are your thoughts? What are you hoping to see? What are you hoping to do differently? How is the cast going to work?
I want them to take down like a corrupt cop force. That could be interesting to see. Just as like, because I feel like everything in the Saw movies were somehow connected to John Kramer / Jigsaw. So, but an underlining theme of those movies was like corrupt cops and like corrupt systems, corrupt society. So I want to see, like, with all the things that we've been dealing with in society lately, I think it could be interesting to be like, let's take down a corrupt police force or corrupt system, something like that. So it's still in the realm of like, you know, Jigsaw baptism, but not anything connected to John Kramer at all.
Robin, what about you?
I don't know what they would do. I haven't looked at much about it, but I do prefer the whole series when like John was in control, because it was always his logic that made sense. No one understood the rehabilitation, and that was what I liked a lot too, was the rehabilitation process. Down the line, it just, even people that deserved it, they always had a chance, and that was always his big thing. So I don't know. I feel like the best Saw movies have that aspect.
Yeah.
I want to see something like a return to form. I mean, it's got Darren Lynn Bousman. That'd be pretty awesome. Because he said this one is less gratuitous than the other ones, because he went back and said, in hindsight, the gratuitous nature of the ones, I can see why people didn't like them. He wants this one to be more like a movie like Seven, which I think is one of the main inspirations for Saw to begin with, which I'd be really happy to see. I want to see a thriller more than a horror movie this time. Like, I want the horror elements to be there, but I want it to be more like, you know, something that's really involving to the audience, trying to figure out the puzzle as they go. More of like
the first one, really, how it was like, we're in the room, let's look at clues, and then you find this, and it was like a gradual thriller mystery, like Silence of the Lambs, horror-ish, but you know, not always.
Right.
Yeah. Also, kind of look at the differences in the trailer. Did you guys all watch the trailer that came out this past week?
No.
A couple things that are different. Like, instead of Billy the Puppet, they have a pig mask doll. Just reading it. And the messages, they all sound way different than John Kramer's messages. It looks like they're recorded on a different kind of file too. It's not analog like it was. It's some kind of digital file. Like, these little differences they're gonna make for like a whole entirely.
Do you know
different
when
movie.
they started like writing or like filming this movie? Because it, you know, with like Samuel Jackson and others in it, like, it makes you wonder.
I think it's been maybe a year and a half, 2 years. Because I know it was announced quite a while back. It was immediately after Jigsaw. It's the same guy who made Jigsaw, made this one, helped out with it at least. I think he wrote the script for it.
I like the idea.
Jigsaw, yeah.
Like the idea of what?
Oh, sorry. I like the idea of instead of having Billy the Puppet, which was so connected to John Kramer, that we have the pig mask, because those are what the disciples of Jigsaw, like, that was their thing, the pig mask. So I like that it's a pig. And as far as like the audio clip, like, if it is no longer John Kramer, obviously, or anyone connected to that storyline, I don't want it to use like a similar voice, because I just don't want that. So I mean, it makes me feel more comfortable that way. It can be in like the same world, same realm, but not
exactly
same, like, whereas what they try to do with Jigsaw. So I'm excited for that. Oh, we never talked about the theory of who we think in the last Saw movie, the two people besides Gordon were.
Oh, that's
Hey,
right. Yeah, we skipped over that shit.
There is
Wasn't
a
one a
theory
cop?
on
Because I
that.
thought two of them took them off, and then the one stayed covered. No?
I
Okay.
The
don't think
theory
so.
that I've heard with those is that it was the two guys from the love triangle trap.
Mm.
Which
I think that's
that would be
lame
satisfying
sauce.
at all.
Yeah, I would have been
It's
like,
not
oh, I'm glad your life was changed
a
because you realized you were
theory.
cheated on.
Yeah.
Like, that's not everyone.
And it's got to be something more meaningful to the franchise. I'd like to see it be the kid from part 6 at the end because he was very willing to kill that guy. He's like,
He was
you can't
like,
do it. I
You
fucking
kill my
can."
father, you motherfucker! Which I don't
Yeah.
even care if that was overacted. I love that.
Like that was one of
Yeah.
my favorite moments in the series. Actually, was where he pulls that switch because she gives that speech like, "I'm not doing this because my husband. I'm doing this. So you can't hurt anybody the way you hurt him ever again." And then she can't do it. He's like, "No, I'll fucking do it. Fuck you. Yes."
I think it could very well be him. I think it would have been interesting if it were Daniel from the second movie, Eric Matthews' son, all grown up and being like, I get it. I think that would have been I don't think it was him. I think it would have been fun for it to speculate that it was him. I
Yeah.
think it was the guy from the fifth movie, the one that like had to saw his arm all the way down, the blood bathtub.
Yeah. That was a
I
fifth
think
one.
it very, very well could have been him because we saw that he was still alive in the seventh movie. And all throughout the movie you kind of see him being like, we're pieces of shit. That's why we're here. Like you see him kind of being like, oh, I get why we're here. I get what Jigsaw's trying to teach us. So you kind of see that like shift. And he had felt like so guilty and so shitty about like all the people's lives that he felt like responsible in that fire for taking. So you kind of see him be like changed, I would say, from a Jigsaw standpoint for the better. So I think he could very well be one of them with Dr. Gordon. Because if you think about the role of like John Kramer versus Hoffman versus like Amanda, if you pull that into, hey, we need to have characters that are like the new version of those roles or like the better version of those roles minus John Kramer, Gordon would be John Kramer. The dude with the arm would be like more of like a better version of like Hoffman, less strong, but more stable. And then the boy that ended up being like, you killed my dad, because he's a little bit crazy there. Like, I did it, like Amanda. So that would be my fun little theory that I wish I'll never find out the answer to, but I would like that.
I think
would
even
like
the
that to be it.
screenwriters forgot that that's something they have to answer. I think they set that up and they could have had like a flashback at the end saying who those guys were, but they kind of I think they forgot.
They're like, fuck it. We wanted it to end there. I kind of like it though, because it's one of those things in the Saw movies that I feel like are unanswered because they did such a great job of being like, let's tie back all these pieces so you don't have any questions. But like that's the one thing that they kind of left for us to just speculate and argue about and hope for, and you know what I mean? To be like, we don't know, who were they? So I think that's kind of fun.
So don't want to like leave the audience asking for more.
Yeah, like who were they?
That since also, like I said, since Saw 6 did so poorly, it felt like the writing was on the wall for 7, and it might be a thing of that might be the one leave untouched or one question they leave unanswered in case maybe, hey, we get to do more of these. Let's left off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So closing out, time to rank the movies. I'll go first and then go from there. I would rank them starting with the best, Saw 2. Second best, Saw 6. Then the first Saw 4, Saw 7, Saw 5, Saw 3, and easily the worst, Jigsaw. Ashton, how about you?
Oh, yikes. Okay. The best would be Saw 2. The next best for me, I'm going to actually say 4. I really liked 4. I'm then going to say 1, 6, 5, 7. I told you guys, I fucking hate 3. I can't. I hate Amanda. I hate Hoffman. I hate Jeff. So 3, and then fuck Jigsaw. Like,
Robin?
I mean, if I really have to put them in order, for me, they were kind of running together. I do enjoy the first few the most. So I did like the second one the most as well. And obviously the first one too, because I actually did see that one before all of this. And I totally appreciate the whole mind game aspect. And then I guess 4, 5, because the arm thing totally got me with that. And then I guess like 3, 6, 7, and I've never seen Jigsaw, so that's totally on the last list of the list.
Lucas, close us out.
Agonizing over this. I think my favorite, I'm tied between the first two. I am also one that, as much as I love this ending after 3, and that would have been fine. But I would say I could put you first, put the other one second. I'm back and forth on that. Then 6, because the big twist at the end, one of my favorite effects with him just fucking melting.
Are you still there?
Like, it's a very unique trap. It's something that they had a guy fucking get melted, you know?
All right. Does anybody have any closing thoughts on the franchise?
just the fact the Saw movies were so influential, that they advertised a second movie with the, oh yes, there will be blood, I believe is the quote.
Mhm.
Yes, oh yes, there will be blood. And what they had done was they paired with, I believe, the Red Cross to actually give you free admission into the movie
Right.
if you donated blood. So I think that that's so cool. They raised so much blood throughout time for these Saw movies, and like, what a cool thing to do for like a horror movie. I feel like very influential with the way that we see horror movies and psychology and like even like gore and stuff like throughout time. Like, I feel like it helped revolutionize a lot of things, and just props for having a great horror movie series. So I mean, I love it.
Hell yeah. Anybody else have
Right.
closing thoughts?
What I'd add to that is the whole social dynamics and then the society dynamics that get introduced between the healthcare system and the corruption of cops was, not hopefully super timeless, but it's come time and time again where those things are still issues.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's been Crypt's Family Fun Night, Saw Franchise Edition, the first megasode we'll be doing. I'm Chase Will.
I'm Robin Luddite.
And I'm Ashley McDonald.
And we will see you next week. Remember to go see Spiral, the 9th Saw movie, in theaters early May. Bye, everybody.